Hello, folks. I hope you are having just an absolutely magnificent day today. Today, we're taking a look at the next serial from my Serial Saturday that I like to dedicate traditional to the old forgotten notes and so forth. And this is a sequel to the last Saturday's TV version of the serial called The Doctor Who, An Unearthly Child, which is a four-parter from 1963 that introduced the concept. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Daleks. My notes are here on 22 font on my cell phone, so if you see me looking down and recording, that's what I'm looking at. Sorry about me not giving you the eye contact that you deserve, right, and so forth. Typically, these are the ones that I've done before, last week's, or from movie serials that you would go and see in a theater. And those tended to be pretty long, 12, 15, 13 episode long things, and so forth. And they would draw people into the theaters, and so forth. Now we're taking a look at the TV serial. This one is a smaller 7-part one, The Daleks, for you folks. Each of those is about 25 minutes long, so they're a little longer than your serials would be at movies, other than because they're typically about 18 or 20 minutes each for an episode. These are a little bit longer, about 25 minutes roughly, and so forth. And this is also, although you'll typically have a longer, roughly about this length, first and last episode to sort of start things off and finish things off too, right? And so forth. So it's good, but after having just read a bunch of serials, normally a 7-parter that's this long would feel a little slow at times, especially for modern viewers. But after just coming off of all those serials and going back and watching a bunch of them, right, it's not anywhere near as slow and such, right? It's downright fast and fast-paced and such. So as a reminder, my Doctor Who history, I grew up loving Doctor Who, and I think it's fun. There are Star Trek reviews channels like Trek Central and so forth that have people that are exclusively from the UK that give their opinions on Star Trek, even though Star Trek is made in America, right? So I think it's fun to have an American that has their thoughts on something that's more of a British institution. In this case, Doctor Who. I think there's value in that, right? So anyway, I grew up loving it. My first serial that I ever saw was the Fourth Doctor's, Robots of Death. I love seeing it. How it was spooky and creepy and watching it at my local PBS channel at the time. I was born in 76 at the tail end. So I was watching Doctor Who in Southern West Virginia on our PBS channel, and it was showing it at 6 p.m. each night. And instead of me going home and I watched Doctor Who every night, as it was new and fresh at the time, rather than watching some of these older things, the newer things that are being shown for kids, specifically my age, like He-Man or G.I. Joe, right? And those sorts of things, or Braveheart. I was definitely somebody who was more into Doctor Who at the time, loved it lots. It was my thing. And so, starting from Robots of Death and on. And then I was watching it contemporaneously at the same time, and roughly growing up in the 80s. And then, and so I watched it as the Fourth Doctor, as he regenerated into the Fifth Doctor on TV. And then I followed the Fifth Doctor, and he was my favorite after that regeneration happened, and so forth. And then I watched the first season, the Sixth Doctor. And then they had stopped showing the live ones, so I never saw a Trial of a Time Lord series on live. They just went back and started showing the fresh ones, the older ones again. Unearthly Child, I saw that again live, and then I saw the Daleks right afterwards on PBS. So I did see these two back to back, and loved it lots. For you folks. Then when I was in college, I was an RA, and in my sophomore year. And I wanted to do some programming that was more geared towards, a nerd audience, since we had the Honors College and I was in the Honors program and that sort of thing. So I thought it would be fun for me to do something. I called it the Whoathon, and for a weekend I rented 48 hours worth of VHS tapes from the local store of Doctor Who stuff, and showed a Whoathon for 48 hours over the weekend, starting on Friday night and ending on Sunday night. And I actually showed this on VHS tape. And I had watched it with many of my friends, gaming buddies and so forth hadn't. and so forth. So I thought it would be great to show this, like, as this apex, for the 7 episodes. And so forth around midnight on one night, because I thought it would be very gripping and great stuff, and then some of them fell asleep. It was funny. And so forth. That's the second time I watched it. I bought all this stuff on DVD as they were released, so I watched it on DVD, and then a third time. Then I watched it a fourth time on BritBox, where I streamed it during the COVID era a couple of years ago, and everybody was watching stuff from home. And I just had a lot of time in my hand, and I wanted to go back and watch them. All the older stuff. And then I watched it again on color last year in that version, if you count that. And then again for this review just this past weekend. So that's about 5 times if you count all those things. If you don't count the color, 6 times if you do count the color. So that's a lot of times I've seen the Daleks of the lots and so forth. So there you are. So as a reminder, this is still starring William Hartnell as the first Doctor, my favorite Doctor nowadays. He really sort of made this as iconic and really put it on a map in a major way, especially now with the Daleks and so forth. As his granddaughter Susan Foreman, as Carol Ann Ford, for you folks over lots, and so forth. And they had a very similar relationship, similar to their on-screen one in real life. And then the two sort of our characters from our time. At that time, in the early 60s, right? Our history teacher, Barbara Wright, played by Jacqueline Hill, whose role it is to talk about historical things in context. So, for example, in the Aztecs, she'll tell you that they never had wheels. They had never developed a wheel, right? That sort of a thing. So she'll have that historical context for you folks. And then providing science knowledge, science teacher Ian Chesterton, played by William Russell. And so those are the 4 main characters. All 4 of those will reprise their roles. And then there's a huge cast of Thals and Daleks and so forth in this for you folks. This is continued to be produced by a very deliberate, the first female producer in British drama history at the BBC for you folks. This is directed by 2 people who had each directed different episodes. So they split up directing duty. And those are Christopher Barry and Richard Martin for you folks. This is written by Terry Nation. This will put him on the map in a major way. And he's going to start, because at the UK at the time, writers who created things kept all of their sort of copyrights for them too. So he's going to keep all that copyright, and he's about to make a lot of money from the Dalek mania that's about to hit the UK. Heavy. This is going to be remade as a silver screen movie, Doctor Who, and the Daleks in color. And so forth. It's going to have a lot of different sequels. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to try to recapture the Daleks that will just rewrite it and that sort of thing. So because he retained the licenses, toys, lunchboxes, video games, board games, they're all going to get released, and he's going to get a lot of that money for you folks, just as a heads up. Now, I don't want to keep spoilers. As a reminder, this is a spoiler-free review, so in my comments, make sure you don't talk about it either. But I typically like to do the first couple of minutes of something like this, or the first episode in a longer serial. The things you would probably know going in, right, and so forth. So it is more than 60 years old, right? But I do think there's value in not spoiling it for people, and I totally understand why. If you want to go back and watch it, that's fine. But basically what's happening in the first episode, and you'll see part of this at the end of the last one, each of the serials at the time were all set in one continuity all at the same time. So one serial would blend right on into the other one, even though they had different sets and such. So they have just landed on a jungle planet with a petrified jungle outside called Skara, and they have arrived and so forth, and she checks Susan at the radiation counter to make sure it's safe, and it looks safe. And then as the TARDIS crew go outside, you can see that the rad counter actually moves from safe to unsafe and deadly levels of extreme radiation. And so that's going to happen. And now they're all going outside to the petrified jungle. And that's the setup for what's happening. And that sort of a thing. All right, so there you are. So this serial series, because of the creation of the Daleks, which are the Dr. Sargent, and put them on the map in a major way, puts the show on the map in a major way too. Hugely, this debut was better. The debut of viewership was better than the average of 6 million viewers For the Unearthly Child at 6.9. It started better because people started to watch it more. By the end, it would have 10.4 million. It added 4.4 million from the 6 million of the previous one by the end of this one. Huge improvement on numbers. It created, like I said earlier, the Dalek mania, and also being a huge part of this. I look back at some of the critic reviews. They were very positive on it too at the time, as well as later on, and so forth. So this is where the actors, in my opinion, last time, if you recall, the actors were still sort of playing their roles. And this is where they start to put it together. And I think the next serial is really when they start to put it together in a major way. And it's my favorite one of these, the first three. And then this pacing here, like I said, it's a little slow at times in the middle and the end for modern viewers, but for viewers at the time, and for Doctor Who too, and then people who have been watching my serials in Serial Saturday, it's fine. I don't have any major issues with it. Going back and watching it a sixth time. For you folks. So since they're now putting it together, and so forth, I think a modern viewer going back and watching this for historical context, without Doctor Who's and serial context, would probably say this is a 9 out of 10. But I think that with that, and comparing it to other Doctor Who stuff, this is a 10 out of 10. It's an absolute cracker for you folks. And so those are my thoughts. All right. And then, so those are my thoughts on Doctor Who, the Daleks, the second serial of the Doctor Who and the first Doctor. Again, my favorite Doctor nowadays, William Hartnell. Love him lots. Now, this era does have some, particularly, they're basically recording it basically like real serials for movies and TV shows. They're just basically doing it like one day of each episode, a couple of days in each episode, right? Very, very fast stuff. They just really don't have a lot of time. Split up and so forth. So there's a lot of like flubs and so forth, and what they call Hartnerisms, where he'll misstate something that wasn't in the script, but sounds like it, right? And so forth. I find with that. I don't mind that at all. I think it's a part of the charm of this era for you folks. So there you are. Have you watched this? If so, what do you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below, whatever your thoughts are. And if you agree, disagree, my 10 out of 10, let's talk about that too. Just again, no spoilers for you folks. If you like this, why not hit the like button, the bell icon if you're feeling frisky, the subscribe button. Let your friends know too, like Doctor Who fans or serial fans or sci-fi fans of old classic TV shows or black and whites, that sort of thing. All those sorts of things. So, as a reminder, this channel is named The Worst Thing About New Books. That's a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? And again, I originally discovered Doctor Who in books first, and then I read like the Daleks and stuff from my dad. I borrowed him because he was in Britain for a while, and this is my second favorite show after Babylon 5 and before my dad's favorite, Star Trek, which makes him really sad. And so forth. But again, that's to keep finding these old things and talking about them that have been influential. That's the passion of this show, even if it's not books. But in this case, shows. And there you are. And then I just want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing and watching my video, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spend this time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it much. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.